This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, I'm Talia.
And I'm Tanya.
And together we are Crimes and Consequences, a true crime podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Crimes and Consequences. I am Tanya, and this is my lovely co-host, Talia.
Welcome.
And we are attorneys in real life who love to dive into these cases. I don't know if love is the right word, but
Are fascinated by
fascinated.
true crime.
And you must be too, since you're watching. So before I get into today's story, just like to remind everyone to hit like or subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, on the True Crime Daily YouTube channel. Please,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, True Crime Daily. Please hit the like. And today's story that I'm going to tell is about a red hot love affair that ended in murder.
Oh,
But not in the way you think.
what?
Okay? Because you're probably thinking a certain stereotypical way of murder. But anyway.
Passion.
Yeah, passion. So the woman in the story, her name is Ruth Ellis. She met David Blakeley in August of 1953. After she initially met him, I don't think she liked him very much because she said, like, I hope I just never see that little shit again.
Oh, well,
Like, I don't know if he's
goodness.
obnoxious or what have you, but
Okay.
however, this initial dislike turned into attraction
Oh,
because within a few weeks, they started their romantic affair.
that's weird.
David was described as being a very self-confident type of guy. He was popular with the ladies, let's say. He was handsome, and he was kind of like the playboy type,
Okay.
a little arrogant.
Manipulative.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. And it just seemed like he was the type of guy that would never love a woman more than he loved himself.
Ah,
Okay.
Narcissist?
Yeah, narcissist,
I
maybe.
mean, I'm not a psycho.
I know.
Analyst.
Yeah,
I'm just guessing.
Exactly. And unfortunately, Ruth, the type of man she was attracted to, they usually were heavy drinkers. And David was also a heavy drinker. And he wasn't a very fun drunk. In fact, he just really couldn't hold his liquor at all. He became destructive and crude and just,
That's really unattractive.
yes, exactly. Really unattractive and not a very likable person when he was drunk. I told you this love affair moved quick. So within a few weeks, I told you they started their affair. And then not soon after, David moved in with Ruth, even though he was already engaged to another woman.
Damn.
Right. Their romance, it wasn't all roses and sunshine.
Okay.
Right? You're thinking, oh, they're really into each other. But then it turned violent.
Well, how can
And-
they be that much into each other if he's engaged?
Right?
And she never wanted to see the little shit.
Yeah. Right? Like it's like a love-hate kind of
Okay.
thing. I don't know.
All right.
Right? They both were driven by severe jealousy. A mutual friend said about them that they were just two people who should have never
Hooked up.
hooked up. Right. Ruth was working, trying to make the ends meet, and David was jobless.
Okay.
But his big hobby was he was building a race car that he had named the Emperor.
Okay.
And we have a picture of it. It was a really expensive hobby, and David did come from money. So I think part of the reason why he really didn't work is because, he received an inheritance, and it wasn't huge, but it was enough for him to be comfortable. But he still mooched a lot off of Ruth. So, he's not really contributing to the bills, and Ruth is working in a nightclub. That's
She a
where,
waitress?
yeah, she's a hostess, waitress. And he would show up at the nightclub trying to get free drinks.
Of course.
Of course. And Ruth allowed it because he's her
She
boyfriend.
loved him.
And she let him run a tab, but it became out of hand.
Then
And-
she'd have to pay for it?
Yeah, and she'd have to pay for it. And like I said, David wasn't a great drunk, so he'd be there. He'd get drunk, and he just would turn obnoxious.
Be an asshole.
Mm-hmm. And eventually she lost her job because of him.
Oh.
And then, she lost the apartment eventually too.
Okay.
Before she lost her job, however, the club that she worked at, it was called the Little Club.
The Little Club.
Mm-hmm. And at the Little Club, she met a really great guy whose name was Desmond Cussen. He was pretty much like everything you would ever want in a boyfriend. He was unmarried.
Well, that's
single.
Number one.
Single, unlike David. He was someone that had been in World War II. He had flown a bomber plane during the war. He was wealthy. He had his own apartment. He had good standing socially. His family owned a tobacco business, which he directed. So
they have some money.
Yeah.
Back in the 50s.
Right. Everybody was smoking. I mean, tobacco companies today make a shit ton of money too. So soon after he and Ruth began getting to know each other, he told her he wanted to marry her.
Oh.
And he wanted to adopt her 2 children because I haven't mentioned Ruth was married before. And she had 2 children with her ex-husband. She had a girl and a boy. And I'll tell you a little bit about them later. And so, he's telling her that he loves her and he wants to marry her. And he was really, genuinely in love with her.
But she is his boyfriend.
Right. And she wasn't in love with Desmond. She was basically using him to make David jealous.
Okay.
Right. But I told you she lost her apartment. So David went wherever, but Ruth moved in with Desmond.
Oh.
And that was in June of 1954. Like I told you, she lost her job, she lost her apartment, and that's pretty much the driving force of why she moved in with Desmond. But he was over the moon.
Did she still have her kids?
Yes. Okay. She still had her kids. And Desmond and Ruth were together for about 2 years. And, it was a rocky 2 years because...
She didn't really even like him.
No, exactly. And she was really in love with David.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're okay. She's still in love with David.
Yeah. And
after 2 years.
After 2 years. And he tried to give Ruth everything. He financially supported her. I'm sorry. Yes. Desmond tried to give her everything. He supported her financially. He got her own apartment for her when she asked. He told her he wanted to pay for her children to go to private school.
Oh, that's nice.
And he wanted to pay for French lessons for her and modeling because she did do a little bit of modeling. But so when she left Desmond for her own apartment, she let David move in with her.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. And
while Desmond's paying for the apartment?
While Desmond's paying for the apartment.
Not
exactly. So that kind of pissed him off, as you can imagine.
That's not a good idea.
No. So during the following 3 months, her and David spent so much time together. And, she's trailing Desmond along and it's kind of fizzling out because he knows he can't really compete with David. He's finally getting the...
I'm paying for an apartment where a man's living there that's your ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. And
not good.
The sad part too, Desmond is this great guy. He's in love with her and she's in love with
a piece of shit.
Who really didn't treat her well. He sounds like he was just using her, kind of what she was doing with Desmond. And, it just started to spiral out of control. Ruth just couldn't stay away from David.
Toxic love.
Yeah, even though, she's on this rocky path with Desmond, but she just couldn't stay away from David. There was a pretty bad fight between Ruth and David on February 6th, 1955. It became violent and physical.
Who was violent?
They both were violent with each other. They actually, when they were done, when all was said and done, they both had black eyes.
What the hell?
Ruth was limping.
What?
She,
it's horrible.
She was bruised. And 2 weeks later, another fight took place. And Ruth ended up with another black eye and bruising that just went across both of her shoulders. So she
got beaten.
Yeah, she got beaten really bad. A little over a month later, another fight took place. And during this one, David punched her so hard in the stomach that it caused her to have a miscarriage.
Oh, she's pregnant.
Yeah, she was pregnant. And she was just heartbroken because...
Was it David's?
Yeah, it was David's. And she was heartbroken, but he always managed to worm his way back into her life.
That's a flat no.
Yeah.
Nope. Not happening.
After that happened, he knew how to get back into her good graces. He sent her some flowers. He apologized, and
it's the same routine with abuse.
Yeah, it was really sad, and they got back together. Their last night together was April 8th, 1955. So this has been a really rocky couple of months. That following morning, David had decided, okay, I'm fully going to commit to Ruth. So he asked her to marry him.
Oh, okay.
You know, he knew this is what she'd been waiting for this whole time, even though they are incredibly abusive and toxic. Yeah,
toxic.
Just toxic.
Volatile.
Right. And so along with the proposal, he gave her a picture of himself.
Oh,
I know.
That's so fucking sweet.
I know, right?
How nice of him.
And on the back of the photograph, he had handwritten her a message telling her, you know, he was just, I love you so much. It's this adoring message. And, you know, she just cherished it.
Okay.
Before he left her that morning, he made a promise to her that night they were going to go out for drinks at a place called, their friends were named the Find Ladders. They were going to go over to their house. Like, we're going to, after
what?
The Find Ladders.
That's their last name?
That's their last name.
Okay. That
they were going to go out that evening and go over to their friend's house and have some drinks and celebrate their engagement. But he never came back. And when 9:30 p.m. rolled around, she called over to her friend's house because maybe, you know, he went there first and instead of picking me up. And when the phone was answered, a 19-year-old nanny answered the phone, and she told Ruth that nobody was home.
Nobody?
Nobody. And a little while later, Ruth called again, and this time someone else picked it up. It was the man of the house. His name was Ant Feinlander. And Ruth asked if David was there. He said no, David wasn't here. And Ruth kind of felt like Ant's wife, whose name was Carol, was trying to influence David in a way that would turn him against Ruth for some reason. Like maybe, you know, she thought that Ruth wasn't good enough for David. For the rest of the night, though, you know, David never came home. And
didn't they ask, hey, how come you guys didn't show up here for drinks?
I know. That's what I wondered also. I don't know if they really had a plan to come over there.
That's what I'm wondering.
I will never know. So Ruth kept calling, looking for answers because David never comes home. And eventually they took the phone off the hook because she called so much. And she was just annoying them.
Damn.
When midnight rolled around, now Ruth was like, okay, now she can't get a hold of anyone at their house. So she ends up going over there. She was convinced David was there for some reason and that they were lying to her about it. When she got there, she walked up to the front door. She rang the doorbell just repeatedly, and she's banging on the door. Now, this is midnight, right? Nobody answers the door. They
have kids, too, because they have a nanny.
They got a nanny. She ended up smashing a window.
Okay, now Ruth.
Yeah. And
getting a little out of hand.
She actually, the window wasn't on the house. The window was on a car that was parked in their driveway.
Oh, okay.
And it was a green Vanguard, and it was actually David's car.
Oh.
And so she's like,
why is his car here?
Right. Why is his car here? Why are they saying he's not here?
But why did she smash the window?
I know. In a fit of rage, I'm sure, because she found his car there. And
that'd be a way to get someone's attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they'll come outside.
So she stayed there for hours. Oh. She's outside of their house. Now at 2 a.m., the police are called. So Ruth now, is like, okay, I guess I have to gain my composure.
I got a little out of control.
Yeah, I know I kind of lost my shit there, but, she told them, nope, I'm fine. And they don't arrest her, which I'm surprised because she smashed a window.
Vandalized.
It's vandalized. Right. She vandalized it. So the cops leave and Ruth just started up her shit again. She's knocking on the door, pounding on the door, ringing the doorbell. She's demanding to see.
Is it the same night?
Yeah. I mean, she just doesn't get it. Like, David had just proposed to her.
That's true. I get that.
Right? Like,
but girl, you got to go home now.
Yeah.
Police were called.
The police were called again. And now finally, Ruth had left before they even got there. And she's like, okay, fine. I'm just going to go home. The next day, which was Saturday, Ruth called the fine ladders again, but they did put the phone back on the hook, but they just stopped answering it. She went to their house 3 times. Wow. Around 10 a.m. that morning, David was there, by the way.
He was the whole time?
The whole time.
That son of a bitch didn't come out?
She knew. Yeah, he didn't come out.
Even when she smashed his window, he's like, no. Even though he proposed?
I know. That's what I don't understand. Like, can you imagine, like, this is total gaslighting to me. Like,
this is not okay.
I'm sure she's feeling like, am I crazy?
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
She is acting a little...
Yeah,
it's a
but then
much,
he just proposed. They were going to celebrate, and he's in the house and not coming out.
Right. David and Aunt, so about 10 a.m., like I said, David and Aunt go outside. They're going to finally, like, check out the damage that Ruth has done to the car. But Ruth she was in the neighborhood, and she saw them come out of the house.
Oh, shit.
And they notice her. She's in her car. So she's like, oh, shit, they saw me. So she speeds away. And she came back about 2 p.m. And she sat in her car and she's just stewing.
I'm surprised she didn't confront them.
Right. I know. She's just stewing now. It's been a few, now this is ridiculous. It's been a day. Like, what the fuck is going on? And she just,
she's there. She's kind of stalking.
She's driving herself crazy with all these thoughts that she's having. She just really had a bad feeling that, David's still there. And she just started thinking that he's having an affair with the nanny. This is why he's over there. Like, she just starts letting her mind run away with her.
Why didn't she just go home?
Get
some sleep.
I know.
Get some sleep, girl.
She did. She was like, okay, like you said, I just have to go home and take a break. But she did show up 4 times that day. And the last time when she showed up, she noticed that the fine ladders were having a party.
A party?
Yeah. The windows were open.
I'm surprised they'd have a party knowing that they're being stalked by her.
I know. Like, maybe they couldn't cancel it.
Postpone that.
I don't know. The windows were open, so Ruth is listening. There's music playing, people talking and laughing.
That's gotta get her.
She just was livid. Seething. Like, the jealousy, the rage is just coursing through her body. She was like, after everything I've done for David, I supported his broke ass. I mean, he wasn't really broke, but she was paying all the bills. He caused me to lose my job. I lost my apartment. My kids have gone through all this bullshit.
And he said he wanted to marry me.
Yeah, and he said he wanted to marry her, and he caused her to have a miscarriage with their child.
Yeah,
so
he's an asshole.
One of the times when she stopped home, she had drank a bit. So she's also drunk when she shows up. And she had taken a tranquilizer also.
Shit.
She's taken a pill to kind of deal with everything. And here she is. She's feeling like she's on the edge of a nervous breakdown. And here's David just partying his ass off. Probably having sex with the nanny is what she's thinking. And she's just beside herself. So she decides she's going to go home again. And, maybe like try to calm down. But even though, she gets home, but this jealousy is just eating away at her. So the following day was April 10th, 1955. It was Easter Sunday. She took a little drive to Hampstead. Now, this story I didn't tell you takes place in England. It's a UK story. So she takes this drive to Hampstead, and she's going to wait outside for David, who's in a bar. He was having a few drinks with her friends. How she knew he was there.
I was just going to say, how does she know where he's at?
I'm not sure. But this might have been a place he frequented a lot. So he came outside of the bar about 9:30. And she saw him and she called out his name. And she's like, oh, hey, David.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, David.
He hears her because I don't think she's very far away, but he ignores her. And the next few events, because she's like, okay, I'm not going to be ignored because I demand you notice me. Right. Before I tell you more, we're going to take a break. So to the shock of everyone, Ruth pulls out a 38 caliber Smith & Wesson.
Holy shit, she is not going to be ignored.
No. And she fires it at David. He starts to run, and now she's chasing him with this gun.
She's lost it.
She fires her second shot, and this one lands and hits David, and he falls to the ground.
Where does it hit him?
Shot him in the back, but she then walks over to him as he's on the ground, and she shoots him again and again and again.
Damn.
3 more shots. And one of the shots left gunpowder burns on the skin of his back. So she was very close when she fired that shot. She ended up emptying this cylinder of all the bullets in the Smith & Wesson. But upon shooting the 6th and final bullet, she continued, like, patrons reported to the police later that she was still firing because they could hear the clicks.
Oh, she's just like, I don't even care if there's a bullet.
Nope.
I'm getting you.
Nope.
I'm out of control.
Right. She's consumed with anger and jealousy. The 6th bullet that came, actually, it didn't hit David. It bounced off the road and hit a bystander. Whose name was Mrs. Yule. And it hit her in a weird place. It hit her in the thumb as she was walking into the bar. I know.
It's gotta be hit by a bullet, I guess. The thumb.
Right, I guess.
Better than.
And I'm thinking, it's a 38. That's a pretty big bullet.
Is it?
I don't know if Mrs. Yule had a thumb after that. But I guess, like you said.
She's alive.
Right. And it wasn't, in a delicate place, right? As David is lying in the street now, bleeding, Ruth calmly walks over to a man that is staring in horror at this. And she hands him the gun.
Here you go. I'd be like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And this man just so happened to be an off-duty police officer. His name was Alan Thompson.
Okay.
Upon receiving the gun, Ruth asked him, will you call the police? And he's like, well, guess what, girl? I am the police, right?
And I'm assuming somebody else would have already called by then.
I would think. But
okay.
Upon hearing that he is a police officer, she asked if he could please arrest her.
Oh.
She's done.
Done.
Yeah.
Take me.
Exactly.
Take me away.
So she was taken to the Hampstead police station, and David was still alive, believe it or not. He was taken to the closest hospital. He was pronounced dead on arrival, so he was lost before he got to the hospital. His body was taken to the Hampstead Public Mortuary so that an autopsy could be performed. And 2 of the bullets that had caused the most damage, it pierced his body, caused hemorrhaging. I'm thinking it grazed his heart. That was one of the bullets that did the most damage, and he ended up just bleeding to death. At the police station, well, internally, probably externally too.
Yeah.
We don't know a lot about damage, but anyway, at the police station, 3 detectives questioned Ruth without a lawyer present. She didn't ask for one. And the police don't have to furnish you one.
And back then you didn't have Miranda rights because you're in the 50s.
And it's in England, so I don't know what their equivalent of the Miranda rights are. But you're probably right. Because that didn't happen until, the 60s or 70s? Yeah, the Miranda case. As she's being interviewed by the police, she says to the detective, I'm guilty. I shot him. And she said she had the gun in her purse when she first went to the Finelanders' home.
Oh, the first day?
Yeah, the first day. Police asked her, well, what did you plan on doing with the gun at the Finelanders? And she said, well, I planned on finding David and shooting him.
Oh.
So I imagine that if David had come out of the house,
he would have died.
He probably would have died
so
that
he did
day.
The smart thing.
By staying inside. So she made a full confession. And the police had tons of eyewitnesses anyway.
Yeah, it was clear.
Yeah.
She did it.
On April 11th, 1955, which was the day after the shooting, Ruth was charged with David's murder. In her final statement, she said that on the day that she murdered David, she had been drinking at Desmond's apartment, and he was the one that had given her the gun.
Okay.
After He gave her the gun. He took her out to a nearby forest called Epping Forest so that he could teach her how to shoot it. Right, how to use it.
Okay.
When she made her first appearance in court, she still didn't have an attorney. And, they...
She didn't have a court-appointed attorney?
No, I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know what was going on in the 50s in another country.
But I don't know.
She, they arraigned her. They placed a trial date. They make a trial date, and she goes to jail. She was questioned by mental health care professionals, and she was determined that she had no signs of any mental illness.
No, she just snapped.
Oh, yeah. And, she told, I think she ends up getting a court-appointed attorney because she does end up rejecting, they want to go for the insanity plea. I mean,
could have done temporary.
Yeah, or heat of passion.
Capacity. Yeah, definitely heat of passion.
Heat of passion. That's 3rd degree, right? That's a manslaughter. So, but she refused any insanity plea in order to reduce her sentence. She was no.
Something.
Mm-hmm. Right, diminished capacity. You're right. She was that she didn't even tell the police too that Desmond was the one that drove her to the pub that David was at, that he shot her at. She just didn't want to get Desmond in any trouble. At one point there's an adjournment because she does get legal representation. They try to convince her to plead guilty to manslaughter, to take a plea, to get a lesser sentence.
Because otherwise she's going to be sentenced to death.
Yeah, exactly.
To death.
Like we've just discussed, heat of passion is
a defense.
Yeah, it is a
mitigating
defense.
Circumstance, at least.
Exactly. But she refuses. The judge granted a 40-day adjournment. Ruth was sent back to prison. And however, her defense team never was able to convince her to take a guilty plea on a lesser charge. I don't know why.
What about for her kids'
I know,
sake?
Right? And their dad, they ended up obviously being sent to their dad when she gets arrested. But she just, I don't know if she's trying to punish herself.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. I'll deal with the consequences.
Mm-hmm. And her trial only lasted a day and a half. And I don't know why she's having a trial if she's accepting that she did it.
Sentencing?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you're right. It could have been for sentencing
trial.
Because if she's saying I did it and there's no not guilty plea, then there's no point
still
to
got to be
trial.
Sentenced.
Yeah. It was a media circus, as you can imagine, because as I kind of indicated at the start of our show, usually when you hear this red hot love affair and somebody died, you usually think that a man is the killer. I'm sorry to be stereotypical, but
Gender,
yeah. A lot of times it is.
Whatever it is.
Right? Of course there's tons of women who murder, but to me, it's just what I think of when I hear the circumstance initially.
Yeah.
So, and Ruth was only about 28 years old.
Wow.
She was considered to be beautiful. Like I said, she went to modeling school.
Right.
She was getting modeling jobs. And she kind of had a Marilyn Monroe look. She had the platinum blonde and she kind of had that hairdo. When I saw a picture of her initially, I couldn't believe she was only 28.
It's older.
Yeah, she looked older. And I think it's probably the hairstyle or the makeup or something.
My Aunt Bev looked like she was 80 when she was 40.
Right, exactly.
Back in the 70s.
Yeah, I think sometimes I think we've all learned to look a little bit I don't know, younger might not be the right word. Maybe we're looking our real age, and back then they just looked older. But yeah, so I think and she's a woman. It's just sensationalized. Right.
Woman with a gun just out.
Yeah, and
revenge.
Yeah, exactly. He's with someone else and he's, gonna die kind of thing. So this trial lasted a day and a half. And I tell you, it's a media circus and there's just tons of people who want to come and watch, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they end up, you had to get a ticket.
A ticket?
Yeah, a ticket. Oh. They were...
go to StubHub or something. Ticketmaster.
And exactly. And people were scalping them.
Are you fucking kidding me?
The highest price at the time was like 30 pounds, which is a little less than $60. So, I mean, back in 1955, that was a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
It's even kind of a little bit of money now, like $60 for like a ticket to go
crazy.
sit
It's
at
crazy.
court.
Okay.
So, eventually, some of them went as high as like $400.
Wow.
Yeah. So people were just
quite a show.
You know. Inside the courtroom, during this trial, Ruth was dressed in a black two-piece suit with a white blouse, and some people say she looked very chic. Her hair had been freshly bleached. Like I said, she was a platinum blonde, kind of like Marilyn-esque.
Why does it even matter what she looks like at this point?
I don't know.
What's it? Yeah. She's going to get sentenced to death.
I know. But people were like, oh, she looks like she's a Hollywood star.
Nice. Well,
the thing for her defense team, their whole argument was that, she's just beaten down and she's down on her luck. And as she walked into the courtroom, someone in the gallery yelled out, "Blonde tart."
Oh.
And it was also said that when someone accused her of the murder, she said, "Thanks." I don't know. It's kind of unhinged to me.
Thanks.
Yeah. We kind of mentioned earlier that she mentioned earlier, she has this trial. At the trial, she was able to tell her side of the story. And she just said, I was treated badly by David, and I just had enough. And I just kind of snapped. So the prosecution, the name of the attorney was Christmas Humphreys. Isn't that a great name? Christmas
Humphreys?
Yeah, Christmas Humphreys.
Okay.
He had already been involved in some high profile cases. So he was an experienced litigator. He made the case, he kind of rebutted what she had to say by just bringing witnesses. And the defense only cross-examined
it does sound like
two
a real
of them.
Trial.
Yeah. And so the defense team was made up of attorneys who the public had paid for.
Public defenders.
Yeah, public defenders. So, sometimes they don't have a ton of experience.
True.
When it was time for her to finally take the stand, her attorney's whole argument was when she first fired the gun, she was emotionally upset due to, just the severe treatment. I mean, like I said, they were physical with each other.
Right.
And she would have bruises
so he's
and
trying
black
to
eyes.
do a heat of passion.
Yeah.
Kind of testimony from her.
Yeah. And she tried to make, he tried to make her like a good impression on the jury, but he couldn't really.
Can't undo.
Right. You can't undo the fact that she shot him
6 times or whatever.
And
took off the thumb of Mrs. Ewell or whatever.
Yeah, Mrs. Ewell. And he's really trying to turn her into a sympathetic person to the jury, but she kind of, when she answered, she was just, there was really no sign, like emotional sign. Like she didn't play up any kind of stereotypical behavior or anything. She's just very in control of her answers and seemed rational, which is what her defense team
did not want
her to act like. When she was cross-examined by the prosecution, Christmas Humphreys only asked her one question. And he said, "Ms. Ellis, when you fired the revolver at close range into the body of David Blakeley, what did you intend to do?"
Kill him.
And she said this was her answer. "It was obvious that when I shot him, I intended to kill him." Okay, like prosecution rests, Your Honor, right?
We're done.
Like, okay.
We're done.
The next day, the jury left the courtroom to deliberate, and it took them only 23 minutes to find her guilty of murder. It was never mentioned at any point during her trial that, she suffered a miscarriage at the hands of David, just 10 days prior to her shooting them. It was never mentioned that he abused her physically on a regular basis.
He had just proposed and then done all the,
and
just ghosted her.
Right.
Ghosted her.
I mean, viciously. Like,
ghosted
who
her.
does that? The judge really felt like he had no choice to sentence her to death.
Knew it.
She was. After sentencing, the judge asked her if she had anything to say, and the only thing she said was thank you. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
After sentencing was
But
passed
she has
on.
kids.
I know. That's what I'm.
Like, what?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Feel like maybe she just gave up. I don't know. She remained really calm even after the sentencing. She turned around to smile at her parents, her brother, and her sister. They were in the gallery. She was then placed in a van and sent to Holloway Prison to await her death sentence. From the moment she killed David until the moment she was actually executed, she never sought mercy. She never tried to
appeal, nothing.
No. She thought that she deserved the death sentence, kind of like what we talked about earlier, because she did kill someone. She knew what she did. I mean, and maybe not at the moment, because I'm thinking if she's so like enraged, you're not thinking rationally.
No, she was not thinking
But I
rationally.
think like when you do something like that, you kind of like, okay, I'm probably going to be sentenced to death, even though I really think she could have gotten a lesser sentence had she
tried.
Had she tried. She told her attorneys, do not seek any kind of appeal. And before her sentence was to be carried out, she was allowed to see her family one last time. Her brother noted that she was really calm. She didn't seem afraid that she was going to be dying imminently soon. I mean, the next day.
She's much different than me.
I know. I would be crying. I'd be carrying on.
Can you call the governor?
Right. Yeah, please, somebody do something. And at the time, England's method of execution was hanging still. And Ruth was actually the last woman to be hanged in England. But in preparation for her hanging, they took her weight with clothes, and she only weighed 103 pounds.
Aw, tiny.
You know, she was tiny. An 8'4" drop was set in the gallows. They tested it out before she was brought to her spot with sandbags. They were tested.
I was just going to ask how they test that out.
They had a sandbag.
Volunteer?
They had not a volunteer. They had a sandbag that weighed exactly 103 pounds.
Okay.
And they were left overnight attached to the rope that was to hang her. And that was done in order to prevent like stretching. Like it was already being stretched.
Okay.
So that I guess when she was dropped, you know, there wouldn't be any mishaps. Right.
Yeah, because they want the neck to break.
Yes.
They don't want them just dangling.
Yeah, dangling
struggling.
and yeah.
Very morbid.
I know it's very
morbid.
Yeah, very antiquated. I mean,
yeah. Okay.
On the morning of her execution, she wrote a letter to David's mother. And in the letter, she apologized for killing him and said, quote, I've always loved your son and I shall die loving him, end quote. Around 6:30 a.m., a priest took her last and final confession and gave her last rites. She then wrote a thank you note to her lawyer. She did have a team of lawyers, but there was one that she really trusted and liked, and that's the one that she wrote the letter to. His name was Leon Simmons. About 9:30, Ruth was given a glass of brandy. To stabilize her nerves, right? Given her the glass by a doctor.
More than one glass.
Oh, man, I'd need like the whole bottle, right?
Please.
She drinks the brandy, and not a minute later, the executioner walked into her cell. When he walked in, she smiled at him. Her hands were bound around her back with a leather strap, and then she walked the 15 feet to the gallows.
Breathe.
I know.
Gives me anxiety.
She didn't say anything as she walked over to the trap door, and the cotton hood was placed over her head.
Oh, Lord.
I know.
Oh, my.
The executioner's assistant then wrapped a leather strap around her legs, and the trapdoor was open. And Ruth was dead within less than 15 seconds. So it was 15 seconds is a long time, though, right?
Well, yeah, her neck's going to snap, though.
Yeah.
So she's going to, I mean, you're still going to have a pulse for a little bit while your blood goes.
Yeah, that's true.
But
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just crazy.
I know.
Ruth.
As you mentioned, she had 2 children. She left them behind. Her son, Andy, at the time of her execution, he was about 10. And her daughter, Georgina, was 3. Her ex-husband's name was George, so Georgina was named after him. And like I mentioned, Ruth was only 28 years old at the time of her hanging. Sadly, though, the story doesn't end there. There's even more tragedy for this family.
What?
George Ellis, her ex-husband, he died by suicide. He hung himself as well.
He hanged himself?
Hanged. Thank you. On August 2nd, 1958.
So what year did she?
55. So it's only 3 years later. And her mother, Bertha Nielsen, was found in 1969, unconscious in a gas-filled room in her apartment.
So she committed suicide too?
Well, she survived, but she never really recovered in that she couldn't speak after that. I think it maybe damaged that part of her brain.
Wow.
I mentioned that Ruth said that Desmond had given her the gun.
Yeah.
He always denied that he gave her the gun.
Me.
I know, it wasn't me. I didn't give it to her. And he emigrated to Australia and died in 1991. In 2003, after a posthumous appeal was brought by her sister, Monica, the appeals court concluded that it was right to have convicted her of first-degree murder. So the appeal was
denied.
Yeah. Her execution, like I told you, she was the last woman to be executed in the UK by hanging. Her execution played a major part in the movement to just completely abolish the death penalty in England. Although it really took like another decade after her death to for the law to be changed. One of the newspapers in defense of abolishing the death penalty had said, quote, "Consider the task of explaining to the late Ms. Ruth Ellis's 11-year-old son, now at boarding school, what had happened. This boy, who is also fatherless, has had something done to him that's so brutal, it's difficult to imagine. We should realize it. It's, something that should be realized." Perhaps the most haunting part of what's included, of the new law is that, or the effect that it had on her son Andy, was that he made audio tapes later in life. And he managed to interview Ruth's prosecutor, because I think he just became obsessed as he got older.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to lose your mom.
Right. And you don't know what's going on when you're 10.
And he said that the prosecutor described his mother as cold-blooded. Oh. And Andy
didn't feel that way.
No, didn't feel that way. And he actually committed suicide in 1982.
What?
Yeah. So that is really my sad story of jealousy and rage and
just losing it.
And then the after effects of something that happens. I mean, that was just something horrific.
Yeah. And you can see the effects on other people.
Right. Like, I'm not sure why George, her ex-husband did it, but I think her son was just riddled with grief, and I don't know. The kids went into the foster care system too at one point, and I'm sure, there was.
Oh man, well this is a pisser.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So, well, thanks for everyone for listening to today's story.
Thanks, Tanya.
It's very sad. And if you haven't already, please hit the like or subscribe button. Follow whatever it is for you. You can go to our website, crimesandconsequences.com, to find other episodes. There's merchandise if you're interested. There's also information about our Patreon, or you can go to patreon.com/TNTcrimes to become a member. You can subscribe through Apple Podcasts as well. And what you get for becoming a member is you get all of our weekly episodes ad-free and early released. And there's also additional episodes once a week that you
are not in public.
Yes, exclusive to members only. So until our next episode.
Thank you, True Crime Daily, for hosting us. And we appreciate and adore all of you that are taking the time to write positive things and watch us and listen. So do us a favor. Don't kill each other.
Bye.
Bye.